Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bharati, the Lotus Center of All Faiths coordinator. Thank you for joining tonight for the first of our 2026 Interfaith Focus presentations. Our monthly presentations dedicated to a faith path. Tonight's faith that's going to be focused on is Buddhism. And it's a joy for me to introduce our guest speaker, Mindy Zlotnick. She's been practicing in the Theravada Buddhist tradition since 1987, better known as insight meditation in the West. Vipassana meditation focuses on gaining insights that arise from a gathered, calm, clear mind into the nature of reality. She has done approximately 20 months of silent retreat, including 3 3-month retreats and 1 2-month retreat. She's also worked and practiced at Insight Meditation Society in Massachusetts for 18 months as a retreat support fellow, supporting yogis in distress who were in the silent retreat. And Mindy lives in the Yogaville community. And please help me welcome Mindy Zlotnick.
Thank you. I think this is probably the first time that I've seen something begin on time, on the minute in Yogaville. So I guess I have this expectation that people are going to be coming in late, so we'll just go with it. So can everybody see this board? Yes? Okay, good. So I want to thank the Lotus Center for All Faiths for giving me this opportunity to talk about a subject that's really dear to my heart. And when I was in the process of discerning what would be the most beneficial part of the teachings to talk to you about in 45 minutes, I came across this quote from the Buddha. And he said, "I teach one thing and one thing only, suffering and the end of suffering." So it seemed appropriate to speak about the very first teaching that the Buddha gave after his enlightenment, which was exactly about that, suffering and the end of suffering. This teaching is called the Turning of the Wheel of Truth Sutta. It was given on a full moon day, on the full moon day of July, to 5 ascetics that were his former companions on his spiritual path before enlightenment, at Deer Park in Sarnath, which is near Benares or Varanasi in India. The Buddha started the discourse by advising these 5 friends of his, ascetics, to give up 2 extremes. The extreme of self-indulgence, which he knew very well, growing up in a palace of the king, his father, and at the other extreme, the indulgence of self-mortification, of causing pain to the body. He advised against too much sensual pleasure because these pleasures were what he called base, worldly, and did not, and was really unhelpful to spiritual development in his experience. And on the other hand, tormenting the body was painful, not noble, and also unhelpful to spiritual development. So he advised them to follow what he called the middle way, which is helpful in seeing things clearly as they are and attaining knowledge, higher wisdom, peace, and ultimately enlightenment or nirvana. And then the Buddha continued by describing the 4 Noble Truths, which included a path to follow in order to bring these truths to fruition. The first truth was the truth of suffering. There is suffering. The second is that there is a cause to suffering. The third is that suffering can end. And the fourth truth is that there is a path that can be followed in order to bring the other 3 to fruition. And this path is called the Eightfold Noble Path, which is what I'm going to be talking mainly about today. Recently in a class that I was taking, the teacher, Gil Fronsdale, talked about a different translation to the Four Noble Truths. He called it the Truths of the Noble One. And Gil says that the Buddha really appropriated the word noble that pointed to status and power and authority of the people in India at that time. And he redefined it. He made it available to all to become noble in a sense of someone who lives dedicated to non-harming, letting go of greed, hatred, and delusion. So I feel like I made an assumption that all of us here tonight are noble ones. We are all way seekers, looking for a path to liberate our minds and our hearts. And in reviewing my life, I see how this particular path has supported me in untangling the societal, cultural, family of origin conditioning that I experienced in my life. And it supported me in order to see things more clearly, supported me to drop the conditioning, creating a more open heart, more contentment with what is actually arising in my life and happening in my life. I experienced over the years a deeper sense of happiness and a greater capacity for kindness, compassion, generosity. When I was younger, I was not a happy camper. I was chronically depressed, negative, and constantly wanted what I didn't have. And I see how this mind-body stream has morphed over the years, and it's definitely a work in progress. There's no perfection here, but I can't imagine doing life without this practice. So the first noble truth that the Buddha talked about, so there are 4 noble truths. Can you all see that? Is it dark enough? Am I doing something wrong? What's that? Alejandro? Am I doing something wrong? Let me just switch to this one and see if it's... We okay now? Okay, so the first noble truth is there is suffering. And this is really meant to be understood. It's really an umbrella term that invites reflection on a range of human reactions to the circumstances of life. So the word for suffering in Pali, which is the language that most of the Buddhist teachings, all of the Buddha's early teachings was written in, so the word in Pali is dukkha. And that word might arise sometime in this talk, so I just wanted to put that out as dukkha is suffering. And it's translated in many words. It has many faces, many facets. So I'd like you to try and pay attention to these words as I say them, different translations of suffering, and how they land in your body and in your heart as you hear them, okay? So different translations for dukkha. Unsatisfactoriness, unreliability, stress, anguish, chaos, anxiety, instability, inadequacy, disappointment, failure, despair, uncertainty, lack of control, grief, frustration, fear, anger, longing, yearning. Not the most wonderful emotions to be thinking about, are they? No. And most people will turn away from them and not want to relate to them at all, because that's the way suffering usually is in our society. We turn away from it. Did you have a question?
I did. Those,
Translations?
yes, they're all emotional. Does the suffering, oh, I'm sorry.
You know what? Can we keep questions to the end?
Sure,
Can you hold on to that?
I hope so.
Okay, I hope so too. Basically, so in general, suffering is the mind and heart's resistance to life simply being as it is, no matter what arises. We want things to be other than what they are, oftentimes. Saying sentences like, I don't like this, or if only, really begins that kind of suffering. Simply stated, it's not getting what we want and or getting what we don't want, right? Sometimes it's mistranslated or misquoted as all life is suffering. And this is really inaccurate and misleading. The Buddha didn't teach that life was constant misery. That's not what it was about. Rather, he said that suffering is an unavoidable reality of ordinary human existence that was to be known and understood and responded to wisely, not turned away from. Is it possible to have freedom from suffering? Or is it possible to have freedom from the things that we think will make us happy? It's not really about having that causes suffering. It's about wanting to have that causes suffering. That wanting. We experience suffering when we want something, anything, experience, thought, people, whatever, to be otherwise. So the second noble truth is that there's a cause to suffering. And the cause in general of suffering is craving, grasping, clinging. One clings to or is identified with what one desires. So I wanted to drill down into that word desire a little bit. What exactly is desire? Because desire isn't the culprit around here. It's the wanting, the desire, that really brings suffering. So desire really is any movement towards or away from a person, an object, a thought, an experience. We can really want that house or that job. We really want it. Or we really don't want that person in our life. Or we really don't want our car to break down. Pushing away or bringing towards us in either direction is desire in Buddhist terms. Grasping after a desire and believing that our happiness depends on getting it is what imprisons the mind, not the desire itself. So when one sees how suffering arises, it's an opportunity to shift the relationship to suffering. When one clings to a desire, one becomes defined by that desire. The world is seen through the eyes of someone that wants a particular goal or outcome. according to the Buddhist teachings, this is a distorted view. The mind is contracted around the desire, and it acts like this is the one thing that can get us our happiness, that can bring happiness. And oftentimes, the goal only brings fleeting happiness and is quickly replaced by another desire, and the cycle continues. Have any of you experienced that in your lives? Yeah. So when suffering, we're holding on, we're wanting things to be a certain way. We want control, we avoid vulnerability, we avoid wildness or chaos, and we suffer. But we can identify the cause of suffering and change our relationship to it. And the third noble truth is that suffering can cease. It's possible to have the wanting cease, to set it down, to abandon all craving. Now, I have to say, nobody said this was going to be easy, so it's not. I'm not saying it just happens. But the truth is that it does happen. So abandoning all craving, we can release it, we can reject it, we can relinquish it, we can renounce it. The mind is willing to be, when the mind is willing to be with what is true in the moment and isn't disturbed by it, suffering ceases. From this place of non-attachment, there's a freedom to respond to the moment in a manner that's aligned with our values and reflects our deepest wisdom. When there is cessation, the mind no longer burns in response to positive or negative experiences or thoughts or people or whatever. One is no longer defined by or living from or identified with whatever is arising or passing. Total cessation, in Buddhist terminology, is called nirvana or enlightenment. The path to this, though, is a gradual awakening and inviting moments of cessation and being aware of them. If one reflects all the time that the mind has been filled with, let's say, anxiety or dread about the future or blind with lust or overwhelmed with grief, one can realize that each of these mind states underwent a little cessation that allowed one to go on living and functioning. Paying attention to these little moments again and again and again allows for development of more of them and prepares for the big one, the big enlightenment time. So the Buddha in the Buddhist teachings generously give us a path to follow in order to bring these three truths to fruition. And that path is called the Eightfold Path. It's usually divided into 3 clusters or baskets. And so the fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Path. And there are 3 baskets. First basket I'm going to tell you about is wisdom. The second basket is ethics, and the third basket is meditation. So,
Could you repeat that again, the 3 baskets? Wisdom,
can you see this? I think you should move because I'm going to be writing things down. It'll save time, okay? But it's wisdom, ethics, and meditation. So This path is really meant to be cultivated as a gradual path of awakening, like I said before. And it's really about our life, that's how I see it. It really describes life in from many different viewpoints and very different angles. It really supports and gives the mind stability. It touches on vulnerability instead of feeding into the habits of the world of greed, hatred, and delusion. The path is these three groups are really integrated and woven together. It's not like you start on step one and go through them, but I kind of visualize them or have experienced them more as a circle or a spiral going down deeper and deeper or going up higher and higher, whichever way works. And each factor on the path is called right something, right livelihood, right view, right intention, et cetera, et cetera. And the word right is translated not in the sense of right and wrong, as an ethical right, this is the right way to do it, but rather that it's helping us choose a path that is in alignment with the Four Noble Truths and supports the waking up process. So a better translation might be wise or complete or integrated, that it really is, in choosing that path, we're going to be in alignment with the Four Noble Truths, and it's going to help bring that into our lives. So in the wisdom basket, this group cultivates steadiness and wholesome, skillful motivation. There's one teacher that calls these two, which are wise understanding and wise intention. Those are the two factors that are in the wisdom basket. She calls them the supervisors of the path. They're the ones that keep us on they're guardrails to keep us on the path. Wisdom and intention. Understanding and intention. So, right understanding or wise understanding, often also translated as wise view, wise understanding or wise view. It means to know and understand the Four Noble Truths, quite simply. It's a powerful antidote to thinking, what's the point of all of this? Or everything's so hopeless, I can't go on. But in understanding the Four Noble Truths, it gives us a different way of being in the world. And how do we want to relate to our lives, given it's this way right now? It's about understanding cause and effect or conditionality. Oftentimes we try to distance ourselves from things that we don't want to see. We learn about suffering and what causes it because we're tuning into cause and effect. So rather than stuff spontaneously arising, we can see what caused it to arise. So the first factor along the path, or this first factor that we're talking about in right view, is really looking at the three other noble truths together. There's suffering, there's a cause of suffering, and it can stop. Right aspiration or intention or right attitude, some people call it right thinking, cultivates a commitment to be as skillful as we possibly can. And it has three components. One component is renunciation. Renunciation is really a commitment to simplicity, of being here now. It's like this right now, and not being pulled by cultural complications. It has an attitude of letting go, of just letting be. The teacher that I'm studying with right now also included thoughts in renunciation, that we can watch a thought or an unwholesome thought, an unskillful thought arise, and we can put it down. We can put it down and renunciate it and not follow through with it. The Buddha said that this practice in its totality is one of going against the stream. And there's a really short story about the Dalai Lama that I think illustrates this quite simply. He was being taken to a conference in New York City, as I remember, and he was being driven in a car, and he was going up or down Fifth Avenue, whichever way it went, and he saw all these beautiful stores, with all their beautiful merchandise and picture windows and all that stuff, and he kept looking out the window every day, looking out the window, looking at the window, and finally somebody said to him, is there anything that you need, anything that you'd like us to get for you? And he said, oh, no, I'm just looking at all the things that I don't need. And it was really going against the stream. Here was Fifth Avenue, right, saying, buy me, be happy, you need this. And he was just looking at it like, interesting. So going against the stream. The other element of aspiration is non-harming, that there are thoughts of harmlessness, not as opposed to cruelty. And these include the 5 precepts, which we're going to talk about more later on in the path. And the third element in right aspiration is non-ill will, which is basically goodwill towards others, cultivating a heart of loving kindness, which in Pali is called metta, the heart of metta. We learn to recognize when the heart sets down aversion and recognizes the absence of ill will, which is sometimes a little tricky, for me, at least. And it's definitely with a willingness to take in love. So those 3 things, renunciation, non-harming, and non-ill will, come together to give us the right intention, the right attitude, the right way of thinking. And again, these 2, the understanding and intention, understanding, where did I put this? Okay, down here. And intention are the supervisors, right? So moving on to the next basket of ethics, discipline, virtue, morality. The first in that is, the first one in that basket is right speech. And speech is all animals communicate in one way or another. Some people are able to communicate and understand the communication of non-humans. But we humans have this very specialized, very developed form of communication in our speech and in our listening. And the Buddha really took this as a very important part of the path and made it one of the factors. Even though it's one of the precepts that's in another list in the Eightfold Path, right speech is up there, first and foremost, because it's so important. What does it mean to be in relationship with others and use our words and speech? Words can cause good, and also they can cause harm. And the Buddha really encouraged to root speech in caring, compassion, as a warm offering. He suggested refraining from speech that is false, that's untrue, or not totally true, like little white lies. refraining from speech that's malicious, slander, refraining from speech that's harsh, and refraining from speech that's idle chatter, that's purposelessness, that's gossip. And I did a really interesting practice. I was trying to remember for how long it was. It was a year, 6 months. It was a chunk of time, at least 3 months. And I really forget exactly how long it was, but I didn't speak to anybody who wasn't present in the room or who wasn't involved in the conversation. So I didn't speak to anybody, I didn't speak about anybody who wasn't present. And it really amazed me how hard it was to do this for myself and for the people that I was speaking to. It was really against the stream in a way, because everybody wants to speak about the person who's not there and what they did and how they feel and what they're going to do and blah, 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 blah. Or to reminisce about the past, right? Or complain or worry about the future. But coming back, bringing the conversation back to, well, what's actually happening between us or among us here, who's present? It's not so easy to maintain. And it was a commitment on my part to do that, to see what happened. It was a very interesting practice. In terms of the positive ways of using speech, the Buddha suggests that speech needs to be timely, it needs to be contain useful information or create better understanding, and it needs to be true. And meeting these 3 criteria simultaneously is the bar. So he says that if those 3, being timely, useful, and true, cannot be met at one time, then silence is the best speech, and not to say anything. So it gets tricky sometimes to analyze that and to see that. But I have found through experience that it's really, really helpful. So speech really is a communication, a communing and interactive practice that includes speaking and listening from the heart with an attitude of compassion, kindness, and humility. The next factor in this, in ethics, is right action. So we have right speech. We have speech, and which one am I doing next? Action. And livelihood. I don't think that's spelled right, but you get it. So in terms of right action liberates the mind and moves the person towards freedom from suffering. It supports the feeling of well-being that is independent of external conditions. And right action really boils down to 5 precepts in the Buddhist teachings. And the first one is, and these precepts are offered as a training. They're opportunities to discern skillful and unskillful actions and their consequences. So having grown up in a Jewish family where the 10 Commandments were, like it, and if I followed them, I was a good girl. If I didn't follow them, I wasn't a good girl. Didn't work for me. And I really appreciated the guidance that the precepts gave me and the opportunity to use them as a training. It's possible that I could follow a precept and see the consequences of following the precept, or it's possible that I didn't follow the precept and see the consequences of not following the precept, and making the decision for, oh, that wasn't good for me. I'm gonna follow the precept next time. And so it's offered as a training. We're not, when I started on this path, I wasn't there. I really for the right speech of lying is part of right speech, of telling the truth. I could see all the white lies. All of a sudden, they were like, oh, white lie, white lie, white lie. Just a little off, just a little this, a little that. And I could see, no, that wasn't good for me. That wasn't good for my heart. And so it eventually, after much awareness, began to drop out and change and morph. And it was really amazing to see how it worked. And it gave me a lot of faith in this path. So the 5 precepts, the first is probably familiar to you: no killing or taking of life, offers a reverence for the caring of life. Abstaining, the second one is abstaining from taking what is not given, better known as do not steal. But I like thinking about it as taking what is not given, because it's a broader way of looking at the precept than stealing has a certain connotation to it. But taking what's not given is a different way of looking at things. It really gives us a sense of responsibility for what we need to do when we live together. And will this bring lasting happiness? The third precept is right speech, which we already talked about, and the Buddha took that out of this list and made it its own factor. The fourth is abstaining from sexual misconduct, or the misuse of the power of sexuality. It talks about refraining from acting in inappropriate ways. It's not about denying or repressing our sexuality. It's really about the reverence for the magic and the beauty and the power of eros and sexuality. When sexual energy manifests maturely and lovingly and appropriate, it reveals a potential for unity with ourselves and with our partner. And the compassion and the love and the unconditional love that can arise is magical. So abstaining from sexual misconduct is really looking at misuse of the power of sexuality. And the fifth is abstaining from intoxicants. Abstaining from intoxicating your mind with drugs, alcohol, or other stimulants that interfere with your ability to be mindful, or to your ability to act wisely. So this is a precept that's really a discerning precept. Like for one person, a glass of wine might be like a glass of Coke, But 3 is too much. I can't act wisely. That's not for me. And it's so really, all of the precepts are a process of discerning, where do I go off or where do I go out of line? An intoxicants is how much is enough or how much is too much, and staying with that. So it's not about no drinking, no drugs, but about how do I act under the influence of. And the last one in this basket is right livelihood, or securing the necessities of life, the support and the energy. How do we sustain ourselves while we're waking up in a way that can sustain us in the path? So being mindful and present at work with whatever we're doing and not harming self or others is the bottom line. The Buddha said that livelihood needed to be gained legally, peacefully, honestly, and in a non-abusive manner. He said to avoid dealing in weapons, dealing in human beings, like in slavery or prostitution, dealing in meat or raising animals for meat, dealing in poisons, and dealing in intoxicants. So work is really an expression of our ability to contribute to the energy of life. And I really appreciate that it's part of the Eightfold Path. It's something that's embedded in it, that we really have to look at how we sustain ourselves in order to maintain our wholesome relationship with the world. And the last is meditative training. We have right effort, mindfulness, and concentration. And I think everybody here is pretty familiar with meditation. The meditation that is done in Buddhist circles might be a little bit different than the meditation that's done here. But effort is needed whenever you meditate, I think. So right effort, or some people translate it as diligence, right? Diligence. Is really directing your attention so you're not caught in mind states that arise. And where you direct your attention is where you're going to be getting and receiving, it's what will receive energy. So we need energy to really guard against and abandon unwholesome states, states that will lead us to suffering, and develop and maintain wholesome states. Right effort has to do with how you are being with whatever is arising for you. For example, you may really be hurt by somebody's actions and may be having terrible thoughts about them. The practice of right effort is not to reject those thoughts, for that would only push them underground and give them even more power, which will show up later probably in unwise words, perhaps, or actions when the conditions are right. Instead, you can move attention from identifying with the terrible thoughts, oh, I'm a terrible person, I'm thinking these terrible thoughts, to the suffering that's contained in the thoughts, which in turn will give rise to compassion and give clarity to see how you're getting caught. Instead of being caught in this reactive mind, you're able to accept that life includes such difficulty. Betrayal looks like this. The external conditions and the emotional experience of it are no different, but you're no longer defined by your emotional reaction. So right effort can lead us down that path and help that. And all of these factors, right effort, mindfulness, and meditation, they all kind of go together in meditation. And so right effort is needed to stay mindful and to stay concentrated, and concentration is needed for mindfulness, and they just all work together. Right mindfulness is really paying attention to our experience of the body, to mind states, to feeling tones, pleasant or unpleasant, and some other teachings. The attention process notices and stays with what's happening in the present moment, and it can help us to see things more clearly, and help us to investigate so that we can see things more clearly. It also cultivates an attitude of dispassion, like not really being influenced by strong emotions, and compassion. It gives us the strength to receive experience clearly. So mindfulness can bring us back to the present moment again and again and again. And some teachers suggest that there are mindfulness bells that can help develop mindfulness throughout the day so that those moments can become closer and closer and closer so that there's more continuity to mindfulness throughout the day. And some mindfulness spells might be like you're reaching for a doorknob and bing, you're back in the moment of opening the door. And how does that feel in the body? Or putting on your shoes. The ashram offers lots of opportunities for this mindfulness spell. You're putting on your shoes or you're taking off your shoes. How is that being there, just taking off your shoes? Or the phone rings and you listen, 1 ring, 2 rings, gather the mind, gather the heart, gather the mindfulness, answer the phone, rather than answering right away. So those are all mindfulness spells. I'm sure you can think of lots of other ways during your day that are repetitive things that you can continuously be using to bring you back to the moment. And then right concentration is the last of the Eightfold Path. It's really the ability to collect and unify the mind and abide in states of strong concentration. And it's really important that concentration be developed on the cushion and off the cushion so that the mind is stable and a sense of presence is with us all the time. For many people, it's skillful to begin meditation by focusing on a single object, like the breath, and bringing the mind back to the object if and when, and it will wander. With practice, the ability to establish and maintain attention on an object becomes stable enough so that you can begin to investigate it. And investigation is really an important part of insight meditation, because that's when the investigation is when insights arise. So I wanted to finish with this quote from the teacher that I've been studying with. His name is Gil Fronsdale, as a summary of the Eightfold Path and how important it is in Buddhist teachings. So Gil says, it's said that while addressing his suffering and that which he encountered, the Buddha was immersed in a noble search. There's nobility, dignity, and worthiness in addressing and meeting suffering and then finding a way through it and coming out the other side. We don't address suffering to become greater victims or diminish ourselves in any way. Instead, we look at suffering as a dignified, ever-changing process. The Buddha said that when he was looking for the alternative to suffering, he was looking for long-term happiness, one that's not dependent on the changing circumstances of our lives when we're tossed around in the seas of change. So Gil continues by saying, I like to think that the Buddha designed the Dharma not so much as a place to deal with everyday stresses of life, certainly it addresses that, but in fact to prepare us with care, love, groundedness, rootedness, steadiness, and courage for the biggest challenges that come existentially in life. In this regard, when the Buddha laid out some examples while addressing suffering, he used powerful words that translate into English as grief, mourning, pain, distress, anguish. In looking at the Four Noble Truths, we're looking at the truths of grief, mourning, pain, distress, and anguish. We're seeing that these powerful feelings are doorways or conduits into something that's on the other side of them, something that the Buddha called freedom or peace. Dharma practice can open us up to a deep respect for and an acknowledgement of these things. It can allow us to really see and understand them. As we step into these tender and challenging areas, we have to do so with a lot of care, faith, groundedness, and stability, being simply present, connected, and grounded without getting caught up in ideas and abstractions is central to making Dharma practice effective. In the words of Gil Fronsdale. So I wanted to end with a couple of poems from this book. It's called The First Free Women. It's renditions of poems that were written by women in the Buddhist times who became fully ordained bhikkhunis, fully ordained monastics. And it's not a translation. Maddie, who's a friend of mine at Insight Meditation Society, Maddie was learning Pali, and in his learning and translating, he was translating the Therigatha, and he began to see that there were other ways of expressing it so that modern people in modern times could really understand them. And they really touched my heart a lot, and that of a lot of bhikkhunis that I know also. So I wanted to share a couple of these poems with you. The first one is called Vijaya, Victor. When everybody else was meditating, I'd be circling around the hall. Finally, I went to confess. I'm hopeless, I said. The elder nun smiled. Just keep going, she said. Nothing stays in orbit forever. If this circling is all you have, why not make circling your home? I did as she told me, and I went on circling the hall. If you find yourself partly in and partly out, if you find yourself drawn to this path and also drawing away, I can assure you, you're in good company. Just keep going. Sometimes the most direct path isn't a straight line. And this last one is called Another Uttara, Crossed Over. I asked Padachara, what is the path? Padachara said, just see all thoughts, words, and actions arising all by themselves, not from some imaginary point within. I only partly understood, but I took a seat. As the sun was setting, I saw the endless line of one thing leading to another that had brought me to the cushion that night. As the moon was coming up, I saw the arising and passing away of all things in every direction. As dawn was breaking, wisdom rose in the east and set fire to the long, dark night. But don't take my word for it. Set fire to the darkness within. I promise, it's like nothing you've ever seen. So that's what I have to offer you tonight, and I am open to hearing questions, and I will try to give responses. So, do you remember your question?
It was answered.
It was answered, okay, all right, good.
I didn't have the microphone, so if you could ask your question so that the live streamers can hear.
Okay, I have a question. You mentioned that with meditation, eventually you go into investigation, and that's where the insights arise.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering if you could talk more about that, like what kind of investigation or what that.
Yeah, I actually skipped my example because I was running out of time, but I'll go back and I'll share that with you if I can find it. Let's see. It's on this page. So let's say an upsetting thought about work arises in the mind during meditation, okay? So ordinarily, a person might become anxious when this occurs, that the mind begins jumping from one thought to another. And you really miss the opportunity to investigate the nature of the original experience, this thought, how it felt in the body, what the thought is, or whatever. But if you've cultivated stability of attention in concentration, you can concentrate on the experience of the upsetting thought and know it fully. Maybe you recognize it as a recurring thought, or it may or may not be true. There's nothing to do about it anyway. You realize the mind is contracting and suffering around something that doesn't even exist. It's just a thought. And therefore it serves no purpose. So this is realization and insight. Like, oh, it's just a thought. And you can let it go you can let go of the upsetting thought of the future and come back to the present moment and experience the clarity and ease of mind instead. Is that helpful?
Very
Yeah.
helpful, thank you.
Good. Anybody else?
Thank you, Mindy. It's a lot to digest.
I'm sure, yes.
I do appreciate your examples, though. That helps me a lot. One thing was the last sentence, Gil's quote. I kind of was getting so full, I don't think I picked that whole sentence up.
Being simply present, connected, that sentence.
Well, his
The
final
sentence that I like the best is, these powerful feelings are doorways and conduits. No.
It was the final sentence in his whole quote. I just
Okay.
didn't hear
Being
it.
simply present, connected, and grounded without getting caught up in ideas and abstractions is central in making Dharma practice effective.
Yeah, essential. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. You had mentioned when there are little breakthroughs.
Cessation, in cessation.
Yeah, could you give some examples of what that might look like, of your experience maybe?
Well, like, so 25 years ago, I was a foster parent, and one of our babies died with us when he was 3 years old. And I was devastated, and I was grief-stricken. But that was 25 years ago, and I'm not there now. So that suffering ceased, and I was aware of it. And there are those, that was a big one, but there are little ones too, like, I don't know, can anybody help me? If I'm worrying about the future, and I realize, oh, I'm worrying about the future, there's really no reason to worry about the future. I can put that down and just stay present. That's a cessation, that I'm coming back to what's actually happening in the moment. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, question? Or,
So you mentioned that foster child died, and that you were grief-stricken. How did you come to accept that? And did it take time, or what was it that brought you to a place where you could accept?
I think for me it was a lot of, I had been practicing for probably about 15 years at that point. And I think it was being aware that this was something that was arising and having faith that it would pass away. But I didn't push it away. I stayed with it. And I experienced grief deeply. And it changed and it morphed, because that's what things do. They change. Everything changes. And for many years after that, on the anniversary of his death, all of a sudden I would start, like 10 years afterwards, I was like totally not, I remember I was on retreat one time, and I was totally not even aware of the day or the date, because I was on retreat, and we kind of cut ourselves off from everything, went on retreat, and all these images and memories and everything of babies started coming up, and I was like, what's this about? And then I realized that it was the anniversary of his death. So somehow it came through again, and I sat with it, like, oh, this is about Luke's death. And so the training that I've gotten through this path is like facing those hard things, the hard emotions, the hard experiences, and being able to feel them fully and have them, watch them fall away. Is that helpful? Yeah, good. Any other question?
Yeah, Mindy.
Does Buddhism have any recommendations for physical practices, like how yoga has emphasizes hatha yoga, as part of the tradition. But I'm trying to remember if you and I have talked about that in the parami, or did they mentioned it? Like,
No, there isn't anything like asanas or anything like that. There's walking meditation, which is the balance between still meditation. And so there is walking meditation. And I know in a lot of the retreats that I do, there is usually some sort of movement, mindful movement, that's offered to be able to balance the stillness of the kind of concentrated meditation that's talking about. But there isn't any tradition, no, that I know of. Anybody else?
Thank you. This has been wonderful. I just wanted to go back to, because I've never practiced Buddhism, but in the most recent years, I've been finding what you just said, feeling something all the way through, and it finds completion, right? So that's what you're saying, like, and we push away, right? Yeah, okay. So
If we push it away, it gets buried.
Yeah.
It gets
but
more
that,
power.
you're saying you let it completely finish, and then just like what you said about 10 years later, stuff came back up, so it was, and you be with it, right? And then it completes, and that's the part. Eventually, something I have found things that have just completed. I was like, that's what you mean.
And for me, that happened several times. With Luke in particular, with his death, where I was having these memories come up and not realizing, it's around his death date, that kind of thing. So, it's curious how the mind and body work together sometimes.
Yeah, and I think it's really powerful. I just didn't realize that was Buddhist, but how powerful it is to really actually, like you said, be with it, whatever it is.
A lot of these have been adopted by modern psychology as well, because it works. So there's a certain wisdom to it.
Yeah, that's all right.
2,600 years. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many of you saw the monks the Walk for Peace that just finished in D.C., but the monks' Sangha is the longest established fraternity of people in the world. It's been going almost continuously for 2,600 years. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. Any other questions? Great. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Mindy, for sharing.
And I have a book that I would like to give away. It's called The Missing Piece, P-E-A-C-E. If you want it, you have to promise to read it. It's about meditation. Anybody wants it? All right. The reader of the group.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
The missing piece. Thank you so much. That's just what I've been looking for.
All right, good. Oh, and I also wanted to tell you that this is the book that I got a lot of material out of, one of the books, and also I listened to a number of talks from different teachers. But this book is called Dancing with Life by Philip Moffitt, and it's specifically about the Eightfold, about the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. So this is a good book that I recommend.
Thank you so much, Mindy,
You're
for
welcome.
sharing your stories, experiences, and knowledge and practices of Buddhism. And we so appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll have our next monthly Interfaith Focus next month in March. It'll be on a Wednesday night, and to be announced of what faith and the date. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much.